talk about money because it definitely has everything to do with the state of security. Now, member states of the Economic Committee of West African States, ECOWAS, have fixed 2027 for full implementation of a single currency, the ECO. Members have been given 2022 and 2026 to meet the 11 convergence criteria, including an end of year single inflation and fiscal deficit of more than 4% of GDP for qualification. So far, only 6 out of the 16 member states have ratified the agreement. Addressing a news conference to climax the ordinary summit of ECOWAS here in Accra, President of the Commission, Jean-Claude Cassibro, said the revised date of the ECO is as a result of the coronavirus pandemic on the economy of member states.
So there was a long discussion on the result of those reflections that were discussed at the level of the ministerial committee, and the Council of Ministers also discussed that. And finally, I think what is really, very impressive is that on a very difficult matter, I think President Akufo-Addo really was very, very successful in having all the member countries on board to have a new commission that will be put in March 22 to really, with 7 commissioners from the current 15 commissioners. That's an extremely big achievement. I really want to really thank really the President, the Chair of Authority, President Akufo-Addo, because it was not really at the beginning something easy to achieve. But today, all 15 member countries agreed to have the reform of the ECOWAS institution and to bring the number of commissioners from 15 to 7 commissioners. And I think that was, if there is one thing that we can take out of this summit, is this achievement and important decision that was made by the head of state and government. We also had, in terms of the single currency, a new roadmap and a new convergence pact, and the convergence pact that will cover the period 22-26, and the 27 being the launching of the ECO. So that's also a very big decision, because you recall, due to the COVID, the shock given by COVID, the head of state had decided to suspend the implementation of the convergence pact in 2020 and 2021. So now, they also decided that the ministerial committee should look at a new roadmap, a new convergence pact, to take into account the lesson that have been taken in that we could take from the previous pact. So I think this is now something that has been done. The ministerial committee has presented the result, the new roadmap, and the new convergence pact that was adopted by the head of state and government. There are some other issues that need to be solved, but I think this is a key achievement for the single currency. So I will stop here.
All right, so let's have a quick conversation on this. Joining me via Zoom is a Commissioner for Macroeconomic Policy and Economic Research at the ECOWAS Commission, Dr. Kofi Konadu-Apreku. Doc, thank you very much for your time. Good afternoon. I think you're muted. If you will hit the unmute button, we can hear you. Hello. Okay, well, let's try and work on this so we can hear Dr. Kofi Konadu-Apreku on this. Doc, I do hear you.
I think I'm back.
Yes, perfect.
Is it okay now?
It is. Thank you very much for your time once again.
Thank you. I'm pleased to join you for this important discussion.
Now, the concept of a single currency was first raised by ECOWAS in 2003. That's a long time ago. Its introduction, however, seems to be hitting multiple delays. Are we still confident that we can achieve this agenda, you think?
It's a major challenge, and it's not unique to ECOWAS. You know, if you look at the European Union, it took much closer to 50 years before they were able to converge, before they were able to accept the currency. So it has been the nature of the situation when you have 15 member countries with diverse population, diverse economic programs, and state of development. All put together means tremendous amount of effort must go into the process to get us all converging, or majority of us converging at a particular point in time that will facilitate the introduction of the currency. Now, you say that the EU, had similar challenges. They spent about 50 years to do this. So that's the main reason why someone will say we have an example to learn from. No need reinventing the wheel. Isn't that a reasonable position? Absolutely. There are lessons that we have learned. We continue to learn. My department is almost always in touch with the European Union. We seek advice, we work with them. But the matter is, the issue is that our economies are very fragile. All the economies are fragile. And we have not successfully been able to have stability for a long period of time without disruption. Economic development is a process you build on. Our situation is such that sometimes you take one step forward, two steps backward, and it makes it very difficult. It looks like I've lost you, Doc. Let's see if we can get we can get you back. I'm talking to Dr. Kofi Kunedua-Preku, who is the Commissioner for Economic Policy and Economic Research at the ECOWAS Commission. We're looking at our agenda for the countries within ECOWAS to spend the same currency, which is the ECO. It's taking us years and we have not reached there yet. We're looking at feasibility going forward, even as only 6 countries out of the 16 have rectified this. Doc, you were making a point about lack of stability in the sub-region, as well as how fragile our economies are. Yes. When the COVID hit, it's basically destroy everything. We are weak already, and this hit us very hard. Governments were forced to produce resources, make resources available for projects they've never contemplated about. Businesses were shut down. All of this put together made it almost impossible for anything to move. Before that, you remember we had set 2020 as the deadline for the convergence. When we hit 2020, only one country, and that is Togo, had met all the 4 primary convergence and the 2 secondary convergence criteria, in which case there was no possibility. And so COVID came in and made it what was maybe a possibility completely impossible. So now, the lessons are there for all of us. If we are serious, we have to find a way to manage the economies better than we are managing for all the countries. I was in touch with the European Union sharing experiences, and what they told me that lacks in West Africa is that the citizens are not involved in the process. When governments go out to borrow money, they go to the parliament to get it approved for them to borrow. Parliament knows the level of indebtedness of our countries, but nevertheless, they approve for governments to go and borrow. And when they borrow, they exceed the convergence criteria. They are not able to meet it. The European Union, there was public pressure on the countries, and parliaments refused to take actions that would derail the process of convergence. We don't have it in West Africa. So these are some of the lessons we are trying to get our people to be involved in. When you run budget deficit, you will meet the convergence criteria. When your public debt is so huge, you will not meet. When your policies are inflationary, you will not meet the convergence criteria. There's nothing magical, because what goes in comes out. And what we put in is what we get. So if there was a deeper commitment in West Africa to have the currency, we would have the currency. I see it, as you've lined it up, as lack of commitment, borrowing, which
has become a big conversation here in Ghana, impeding our efforts at this. I want you to, Doc, just run us through the criteria, if you may, apart from the ones that we've already indicated, a single-digit inflation and end of year fiscal deficits, etc. Can you run us through, in a very simplified manner, if I should say, the criteria?
We have two sets, what we call the primary convergence criteria. There are 4 of them. The first one deals with your budget deficit. Budget deficit is the amount that government is not able to rectify and correct with their own mobilized resources. And that the threshold is that it must not be more than 3% of GDP. And that very few countries in our sub-region are able to meet. The second one is that your annual inflation rate on average must not exceed 5%. In other words, price increases per year must not go beyond 5%. Then the central bank, all our central banks loan money or give credit to the government to finance its activities. And because in our system, most of the governors are not respectfully independent of government. When the government says, I want to borrow, they say how much you want to borrow. And all of it affects us. The convergence criteria says that you cannot borrow more than 10% of the previous year's tax revenue. In other words, you're borrowing from your central bank to finance your budget should not exceed 10% of the total revenue of the previous year. The fourth one is the gross external reserves. Your reserves that stand to supplement your activity must not be less than 3 months to cover all your imports. Then the other one is the nominal exchange rate. The exchange rate, all of us, we know the challenges that we have. Our currencies are very unstable, and the arrangement is that it should not vary for more than 10% per year. And then what we call HIPIC, your total public debt must not be more than 70% of your GDP. And that is very critical. Government borrow with good intentions, but maybe sometimes you do not invest those borrowing in enterprises or in activities that generate quickly enough returns for us to be able to meet the debt obligations. And when we become HIPIC, it makes it very difficult. There are less resources available to do the things that we desire to do, and therefore our economies deteriorate.
I mean, Ghana is known to be one of the, very admired and admired countries, and very considered a leader in among the ECOWAS states. Are you disappointed? I mean, we have you as a Ghanaian at this place. Does it disappoint you that Ghana was not able to meet these criteria last year?
Well, every Ghanaian will wish that we met convergence criteria. It's only natural. And when it happens that you are in charge of it, then it makes it even more important. Ghana was doing very well in terms of some of the macroeconomic indicators before COVID. The rate of growth, for example, has been very good, one of the highest, and we were all proud. But unfortunately, a few other variables have not gone the way we would wish. And it is my job as a professional, not as a politician, to point it out when there is a need to do so. And I think we have to begin to take a serious look at the management of our resources and the amount of resources that we borrow and how they are invested. Because at the end of the day, if you borrow and you invest and you get greater returns, there's no problem. But when you are financing debt with additional debt, in other words, you are borrowing to pay off earlier debts, then you are in trouble. And we must do all we can to avoid that.
With our borrowing appetite as a country. We've seen the previous administration borrow. The current administration at the time criticized it. Now the current administration is borrowing, and people are saying we can't stop borrowing. Does that even make the ability to achieve the single currency rather far off?
It will not make it easier to achieve the single currency. You asked me a professional question and I've answered it professionally. No, it will not. But the fact of the matter is that our people must understand that there's no free lunch anywhere. So when you borrow money, invest it in an area that will generate the returns to allow you to facilitate the payment of the debt, because it's not free. We should not look at it for free. And those who have been put in position to manage them should know that it's a major obligation on our part, because we are compromising our country. I'm not talking only about Ghana, I'm talking in general terms. We are compromising the future of our country when we are borrowing and investing and not generating the returns that are commensurate with the obligations that we have to do in respect of making those payments, because none is free. None is free. Okay. When you look at the private sector, there's a lot to learn about it. When private sector borrows money, they borrow money and invest it in projects that the returns are good enough for them to make the profit and pay off. It is the same. Governments must treat the resources available to us in the same manner. It is the people's resources, and I'm talking in generality, not particularly in reference to Ghana, but it's the people's resources that are being invested. They should be invested in areas that will generate the highest return to help facilitate the development of the totality of our country.
Doc, let's finish up this conversation with the way forward. I know that we've talked about the challenges that we've faced trying to, reach that single currency level. The challenges are there, but are there any good things? What are the positive things that the countries in the body has or have that can actually help speed up this process so that we can perhaps begin to exploit those avenues?
Well, I wish I could be so optimistic about these things, because never before we have more terrorist activities in our respective countries than we are having now. Too many destabilizing forces have been unleashed on us. Not the least of this is this terrorist and criminal activities that are going on in almost all our countries now. Neighbors, we have been spared, but we should not relent. And I'm glad, and I want to congratulate the president for making investment in preventing some of these terrorist activities in countries so close to us. That is almost invariable. That if measures are not taken, they will get to us, such as Burkina Faso. They are brothers, we share a common border. It's become, this year, the number of people that have been killed by terrorist activity in Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Chad, it's just staggering and very scary. So we have to be very careful, not lose our guide, and we have to use the resources available to us, investing the highest in the areas that will give us the highest possible rates of return. Managing the economy of country is like managing the economy of a business. Businesses tend to be more careful than sometimes it is the case in the public sector.
So I was actually asking for what good footing we have. Even from now that we've suspended it until 2027, between now and 2027, what is that good thing that we have as countries within ECOWAS that we can explore or exploit to reach our goal of 2027 single currency?
Well, good for us. Measures are being taken to provide these vaccines that will reduce the impact of COVID. I think it's become the greatest threat to us. So once we can reduce the impact of COVID and the level of infections of it, and it seemed to be the trend. Now it's the downward trend throughout our countries, and that is very good. We should continue to make efforts to get the vaccines, and people should be willing to access it when it's available. That is one good thing. Second, we have seen some trends now. Maybe when you go so low, you have to come up. Most of the economies are recovering gradually. And so we believe that if we can have a peaceful environment for us to operate, if we can deal with the issue of COVID and governments have the attention and the devotion and the tenacity to hold on and move forward, I think the prospects are good. For example, it's projected that our GDP growth for this year will be far better than it was last year and the previous year. That means there is some trajectory for us to begin a positive growth rate, and that is very encouraging. So the forces that can move us out of the current situation are beginning to show, and that to me is getting control over COVID and getting control over growth again, the decline. And if we deal with this terrorist activity and destabilization in various countries, I believe we'll be back on the trajectory for a better future for ourselves and for our children.
It sounds good, and it's always been exciting that the idea that countries within the ECOWAS will get to spend the same currency. So we'll see how it goes. Doc, if there's anything else you'd like to add as we wrap up, I'll take that.
Well, I want to say hello to all Ghanaians. I've been away for a long time, but inshallah, I'll be home very soon. We look forward to seeing you. We look forward to succeeding in that position, so that we can say proudly that it was a Ghanaian effort at this level that brought us all to the point of spending the same currency in ECOWAS. Thank you, Doc. That's Dr. Kofi Kunedu Apreku. He is the Commissioner for Economic Policy and Economic Research at the ECOWAS Commission. You're watching The Pulse with me, Gifty Ando up here. We look forward to spending that money in 2027. Hopefully, we'll get there. Do stay. We'll be right back with some more.